Welcome back to the Aubergine Chef. Now today we're going to make a brown butter and sage cake with a vanilla bean German buttercream. Before I get into all that, if you remember a couple weeks ago, I guess was the fruit tart episode because I released my blueberry pie, which was my last standard video. This is now my high definition video series now from now on, which is great. I decided to switch out the curtains because I just couldn't take them anymore, and I think these are actually a lot nicer. And actually, this is a shower curtain, which was kind of cool because I like the idea that it was just like all the way across, not seamless, so it could block out even more light. And it's just a really nice shower curtain. Plus it was on clearance. So anyway, why don't we just go ahead and get started. This recipe was actually inspired to me by one of my favorite food blogs, which is called Brave Tart. She is a pastry chef. She went to the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park. I went to Johnson & Wales, so it's kind of like we're like competitors. No, it's not like that. In the food industry, where everyone's friend, everyone's family, everyone gets along really great, and everyone learns from each other. And she, on her website, she recently did a brown butter carrot cake with German buttercream. And I had heard about German buttercream in school, but I'd never really made it. They always told us it was made with fondant, with like the glazing fondant you use for petit fours. But in reality, it's more like a Bavarian cream icing, and actually it's also called a Bavarian buttercream. What you do is you start off with a pastry cream, and then you turn it into a buttercream, which is a really neat idea. I've never done it before, so I'm looking forward to trying it out. And for the brown butter and sage part, she had a sage caramel recipe on her website, and I thought that was a really neat idea. So I'm going to incorporate that into a cake, along with the brown butter that she used for the carrot cake, and make a brown butter and sage cake, which we can use any time of the year. So this is a funny, fun experimental episode, bringing some savory elements into it. Sage is kind of sweet too. It's not just savory, it's got a nice sweet savory flavor to it, so it's not that super unusual. And to get started, we're going to actually steep our ingredients, because it's always great to steep in flavor to make sure we get the maximum amount of flavor. Since we're using vanilla beans, we want to make sure to steep that in, because you know vanilla beans are expensive. Now you can usually find vanilla beans for a little bit less at like international grocery stores, spice markets, specialty spice markets, like markets that serve sell just spices. You might be able to find some online, or you can just use vanilla extract. No one's going to judge you for just doing that. You can also find them in bake shops too, not bake shops, but specialty bakery stores like Fran's Cake and Candy. She sells vanilla beans. Usually the most expensive place you're going to find vanilla beans is in the grocery store, so try not to get it at the grocery store if you can help it. So to steep our ingredients, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make our brown butter and sage. To do that, we're going to melt down our butter, and then we're going to throw in our sage leaves. And so I'll show you how to do all that. And and this is 6 ounces of butter, or 12 tablespoons of butter, and this is unsalted butter. And we're just going to put that in a saucepan, non-stick, or not non-stick, I should say, just regular stainless steel or whatever. And then we're also going to have, in a pot, we're going to have 1 pound of whole milk. And that's what we're going to use that for our German buttercream for our icing. Okay, so first things first, we want to go ahead and tend to our vanilla bean. And what we're going to do is we're just going to, if I can get my knife on it, we're going to slice right down the middle. And try to scrape out as much of that filling as you can, because we're going to save that for later to put into our icing. And then you just take your vanilla bean, and we're just going to throw it right into our milk, just like that. Now, if you're using vanilla extract, don't put it into the pot at this time, because if you boil your vanilla extract, you're just going to boil out all that flavor. It's not going to stay in. So for our sage, we're going to take out most of the sage leaves, because we don't want a whole lot of flecks in our cake, but we do want to have something in our cake, so that way it shows that we do have sage, fresh sage in our cake. So what we're going to do is we're just going to cut off those little hard stems parts, and then we're just going to chop up our sage, some of the sage. Okay, so it's chiffonade, roughly chop, nothing too extreme. Then we're going to go over to the stove and melt down this butter. Okay, once you have a nice pool of butter in your pan, go ahead and add in all of your sage. This is your fresh sage, but also we want to add in half a teaspoon of dry sage. And this isn't super necessary, but the reason we do this is because dry sage, we can count on it to be the same flavor each time, but with the fresh sage, it's going to be different each time. I mean, think about it. When you have fresh strawberries, each time you have a strawberry, it's a different flavor. With the dry sage, it's a little bit more consistent. Okay, once all of your butter has melted, we're going to increase the heat to medium, and we're just going to let it sit and brown. Okay, in the meantime, our whole milk and vanilla bean has come to a simmer, so we're just going to put a lid on that, and we're just going to let that sit until we're ready to come back to it, so that way it infuses. Okay, once your butter stops sizzling and popping, go ahead and turn off the heat. Remove it from the heat. Give it a good stir. Make sure everything is nice and mixed together. And our butter is nice and browned. So while your butter cools off on the stove, your brown butter and your sage cools off on the stove, you want to get the rest of your stuff prepared. You want to have 2 9-inch cake pans that are greased with a little bit of parchment paper right in the middle. Don't need it all the way to the edge. All you need is right in the middle. We also need 4½ egg whites whisked together with 2 ounces of whole milk and just a splash of vanilla extract, and just whisk it together real quick. You also need 6 more ounces of whole milk. Save 2 of those egg yolks from separating these eggs, because we're going to need this for the German buttercream. And then on the mixer, we have 10½ ounces of all-purpose flour, 10½ ounces of granulated sugar, 19½ grams of baking powder, and just a pinch of salt. When your butter is cooled off, you want to go ahead and take out those large sage leaves. You can strain them out if you want, but this is just as easy. It's probably just as quick. And you use less dishes. Alright, and you just want to go ahead and add this to your milk mixture. Alright, so you want to go ahead and blend your dry ingredients together for about 30 seconds or so to make sure they're nice and mixed together. Then we're going to go ahead and add in all the butter and the milk and the egg whites. Okay, we're going to mix them together until all the dry ingredients are moistened. And then we're going to increase the speed to medium and mix it for about 1½ minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and just drizzle in my milk and let it come together. We'll scrape down the sides of our bowl, and then we'll go ahead and let it mix for another minute or so. Just going to pour in your cake batter about halfway up. Okay, we're going to go ahead and bake these at 300 degrees for about 20-25 minutes to 35 minutes until a cake tester inserted into the middle of the cake comes out clean. And what that means is we'll stick it like a knife or a toothpick into the middle of it, and if it comes out no crumbs on it, then they're finished baking. Alright, so after you've let your milk steep for at least 15 minutes, at most an hour, you're going to take out your vanilla bean. And you want to scrape out all this stuff that's in the middle and get that inside your milk. Okay, now at this point, what you can do with your vanilla bean, especially since it's so expensive, split it in half again. Give it a good rinse to get off all that excess milk. And then just taking some regular plastic container, fill it up with some plain vodka, and just pop in your vanilla beans. And then just let it sit in the refrigerator. And you have your own vanilla extract, your own homemade vanilla extract. And you can just keep adding vanilla beans to this. You don't ever have to really take them out, although you might, so that way they don't get so overcrowded, especially some of the older ones. But this is a good way to just use up your vanilla beans, so that way you're not just throwing them out. Your pods, I guess you should say. And I actually learned that trick at the resort I worked at. They used to do that, so that way they had their own vanilla extract. Alright, so the next thing you want to do for your vanilla bean German buttercream is you want to combine 1½ ounces of cornstarch with 10 ounces of granulated sugar, and you just whisk that all together. Then you want to add in those 2 egg yolks we reserved, and the vanilla beans, and the 2 more whole eggs. Remember, these are the vanilla beans we scraped out prior to boiling our milk. And just whisk this all together. Alright, you want to bring your steeped milk back to a boil. Alright, once your milk mixture comes to a boil, bring it over to your egg mixture, your egg and cornstarch mixture. You want to temper this mixture by slowly drizzling in the hot milk. And what this does is it allows the egg mixture to warm up to the temperature of the eggs without turning into scrambled eggs or omelets. Alright, come back to the stove, reduce the heat to about medium. This is the entire milk mixture back into the pot. You just want to bring this to basically a second boil. Alright, so once you start getting your mixture closer to that boiling temperature, you're going to notice it's going to get thicker and thicker. And what we're doing here is we're cooking that cornstarch that we added to it. One of the things we're doing is we're cooking out that starchy flavor, and you want to do that for about a minute to make sure that flavor is all gone. You also want to fully activate the cornstarch by heating it all the way up. You can see it's already getting really, really thick. We still want to cook out that cornstarch flavor. And also cooking cornstarch gets rid of that white color, that white powdery color. It makes it more translucent. But that's not such a big deal when it comes to the pastry cream because there's so much yolk in it and so yellow. Alright, go ahead and add or pour your pastry cream base for your German buttercream into your electric mixer bowl. All right, now if you were using vanilla extract instead of vanilla bean, this is when you would add it. It's right at the end. But since we use vanilla bean, and you can see on those little small flecks of vanilla bean in there, so it's going to have a nice speckled appearance, so people know that we used real vanilla bean this time. And you can go straight to the mixer at this point. You can skip this step. But my cakes aren't quite ready yet, and I have a dish or a sink full of dishes, so I want to go ahead and take care of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow my pastry cream to cool off. I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap all the way down to the surface of the pastry cream. And what that does is it helps prevent the pastry cream from forming a skin. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just pop this in the refrigerator until I'm ready to use it. All right, so whether or not you chilled your custard, this is the next step. Now, if it's still hot, you want to make sure to whip it until it's cooled to at least room temperature. Well, I guess it can't get much cooler than that. And if you did chill it, you want to warm it up to room temperature. So one way or another, you want to make sure that it's at room temperature. And the reason for this is because we're going to add butter to this. And if we add butter when the filling is too hot, it's just going to melt the butter and we're going to have a soupy mess. If we add it when it's too cold, then the butter is going to seize up and it's going to get chunky. That one is not such a big deal because we can just keep going and warming it up with maybe with a blowtorch around the bowl or whatever. But the point is that we want it to be at room temperature. So go ahead and take your custard and whip it up until it's nice and creamy. All right, once your custard is nice and soft and creamy and at room temperature, we can go ahead and add our room temperature unsalted butter, one stick at a time. We're going to add 2 pounds of butter, which ends up being about 8 sticks. All right, once you get all of your butter in there, you can add up to a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm just going to add a pinch. We're going to go ahead and whip this on medium to high until it comes together. All right, now that our icing is made, we can go ahead and decorate our cake. Now, I've already tasted a sample of this icing, so the nice, light, fluffy icing. You want to make sure to whip it to that point. Just let it go on a high speed for a while. Make sure to scrape down the sides of the bowl and check if there's any custard hanging out in the bottom or whatever, and then get that mixed in. It's got a nice, rich, custardy flavor. It's really different from Swiss buttercream, I have to say. So definitely, if you're not a fan of Swiss buttercream, try the German buttercream out. One thing though is it's a little bit soft, so I don't think you could get roses out of it, but you probably could still get a shell border if you wanted to. So we're going to go ahead and start decorating. I've got a damp paper towel on my turntable, and that's going to keep the cake from sliding around. And my cake layers came out a little bit slanted. That's okay because they're both slanted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have one going this way and one going this way. So that way I don't have to trim them because the cake layers didn't rise so much. I don't want to cut off a bunch of it. This is a great, easy trick to get out of having to slice cake layers because I'm actually not a fan of having to do that. So if I can skip a step, that's great. So put about a cup and a half of icing onto your cake. Let's go ahead and spread that on. Okay, find where the other layer is slightly slanted and just match them up so that way they even out. Once you get your top layer on, you want to make sure to clean off your table and your turntable of any crumbs, because any crumbs that are anywhere near your cake can get in your icing, and you don't want crumbs in your icing. Okay, and we're just going to be really organic about this. We're not going to try and make this perfect because we want this to be kind of a rustic style cake. So we're just going to slather this icing on. All right, now for the sides, what you want to do is you want to reach over your cake and just apply it on, cake board and all hidden. Now we're going to, because the cake board is a 9-inch cake board, it's slightly smaller, or the cake is slightly smaller than a cake board, and that's because cakes naturally shrink in a little bit as they cool off, which is great because that cake board is now a guide to let us know how much icing is on the side of the cake. So we're going to use that and we're going to ice it so that way that cake board is hidden. So basically, however far that cake board sticks out is how much side is going to end up on the side of our cake. To continue on for the organic look of our cake, we're just going to go ahead and just clean up the sides by just going up and down. Okay, after you finish icing the sides, you'll have a ring that forms the top of your cake. Let's go ahead and push that into the center of your cake to get rid of that ring. Okay, and then we're just going to try and create like a little bit of a spiral effect on the top of our cake. So what we're going to do is we're just going to slightly dig our icing spatula into the icing, and then pull out as we're turning the turntable. Alright, and if you're wondering why we're keeping it so organic this time around, it's just because not everyone has time to decorate their cake to the fullest extent. And there are more than one ways to decorate a cake, and it looks perfectly fine. I'm going to go ahead and take this off of the turntable. Place this into our cake stand. Alright, and then we're just going to decorate our cake with a few sage leaves. Now, you could serve this with the cake, or you could just take it off as decoration, like, you know, setting it aside. You don't have to eat it. But this allows us to know, or it allows your guests to know what the flavor of the cake is. Plus, it gives it a little bit of decoration and cleans it up. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take 3 sage leaves and stick them right into the center of my cake. And then for the rest of them, I'm just going to put them along the bottom of my cake, just however, in any direction, in any way. Alright, so there's the brown butter and sage cake. And you see, it's just a very easy, very simple decoration. Like, for example, if this was a chocolate cake, you could do it with chocolate curls around the bottom. So this gives it a nice, fresh look. It's different, it's unique, and it's delicious. Alright, thank you for joining me and trying out some new recipes. It's a variation on a couple recipes that I found. It's a white cake recipe from my site. That was also from Rose Levy Berenbaum's The Cake Bible. And the sage idea was inspired by the Brave Tart's sage caramel sauce. And of course, the German buttercream was Brave Tart's recipe as well. It's a vanilla bean German buttercream. It's a very simple, easy cake, and it's just very delicious. I had a few bites here and there of some of the pieces that were left over in the cake pan. So anyway, I hope you learned a lot today. Thank you for watching. And remember, the Aubergine Chef, demystifying dessert, one recipe at a time.